Hi, I'm Elise, and welcome back to my channel and On the Mind Goes. So today I thought I would talk a little bit about something that is very impactful in my own life, and I see it in my daughter's life, my husband, like all of us. Um, and that is rejection sensitive dysphoria. So that is basically where you have an intense emotional pain to feeling like you've been, so it could be real or perceived, that you have been criticized, that you are failing at something, or that you are rejected. So, of course, all of those suck. But when you have rejection sensitive dysphoria, it basically makes all of those like small little like paper cuts feel like you've been punched in the stomach. Like it's not just like where I think one time they showed, um, sorry, I'm getting off topic. My brain went somewhere, but now I lost her. Um, okay, so let's whatever. If it comes back, it comes back. So like I said, what it was. All right. And then so rejection sensitive dysphoria, this is something that affects or can be like one of the most impactful things for people who are neurodivergent or particularly like with ADHD or autism. Um, and I just thought I would kind of just say like what it feels like to experience it, and then just kind of give a story or two of my own personal experience so that you can kind of get a better idea of what I'm talking about. Because maybe there are some of you who have autism or ADHD, and so you understand or you experience this, but then there might be other people who this is all new to them, or like I'm picturing like I was a teacher and I'm picturing like all of my daughters, both my daughters' teachers, and how this just isn't common knowledge. Like people don't just know this. And so sometimes when like my oldest daughter feels rejected or feels like she's been criticized, she will shut down or she will lash back out. And so to them, I think it might seem like, oh, she's being difficult or, something like that, but they don't fully understand kind of like internally what's going on with her, nor do they understand what rejection sensitive dysphoria is or that it's connected to like ADHD or autism. Um, and so I just kind of wanted to speak to the broader audience to just kind of explain a little bit of what it is. That way, if you experience it or you encounter someone who also is struggling, that you kind of have a better idea or can like kind of see it from their point of view to get like why they're reacting the way that they're reacting. So when someone with who's neurodivergent feels um, rejected, then sorry, I was trying to think of how to say this next. Okay, so it can come across. So, like for anyone outside, not experiencing it, but just from an outside point of view. So, like for instance, if I know when I was younger, if I had like a really good friend, and then that friend would go hang out with other friends, then that was soul crushing. Like it felt like, and I think not because I was like, oh, I'm so jealous. Like I just want you to be only my friend, but more so in my head, I started to go through all of these reasons why they didn't want to hang out with me. So either I'm not very funny, or, they don't really like me, or they're getting together with these other friends and they're all having conversations about me. Yes, very narcissistic a little bit. But so constantly like feeling like either I did something that caused them to be like pushed away or that they never really liked me to begin with. And I think a big part of that for me, at least, was growing up in a military family and moving constantly. So at that time, we didn't have things like cell phones. And so we didn't really keep in contact with people. I had a whole bunch of postcards that I still have come across like years ago and was like, oh, I never sent these. Um, so yeah, so my follow through and staying in touch wasn't always the greatest. But because we moved so much and because I would kind of like get thrown in to these friend groups and kind of make some friends and all that kind of stuff, and then we pick up and we leave. So it always to me in my head, I just kind of saw myself as like a blip on their radar screen. Like I was just a quick moment that, came into their life. Sure, we like hung out, had fun, whatever. But then I'm gone and they're back to like their real friends and I'm just like off on my own and being forgotten. Um, so anyways, so I also wanted to explain kind of, so that's like one example. So a more recent example to kind of give you an idea of this. Well, okay, here's another one. So I know like for me, um, I can be very like go with the flow and, like take the punches, throw them back. But at the same time, when my RSD kicks in, I just, it's almost like, I'm trying to think of what the word is. Like I'm just so much more sensitive, almost like, um, I have this visual, but I don't know how to make the visual come to light. But whatever. Okay. So I'm just way more sensitive. And so something like, for instance, that used to get to me, and I'm much better about it now, though I'll still find moments where like it'll kick in and my husband kind of has to remind me. So my husband and I have been married for 20 years. And when we first got together, so we lived apart for the first 3 years. He lived in Alaska, I lived in New Mexico. And I was very independent. So lived by myself, lived in the dorms. It was just kind of like me and my friends. I didn't have kids or anything. And so we just kind of hung out all the time. And I was very, very independent, very much like if I looked at it now, like unmasked in a sense, like because I just was who I was, and if you didn't like me, you didn't like me, and I didn't really care. Because I probably didn't like you either. No, just kidding. So anyways, so oh my goodness, where was I going with that? Oh yeah. So then when I first moved with my husband, um, I would because like I said, we lived apart for so long. I kind of was like, once we were together, we had to kind of learn how to work together. So before it was just a lot of over the phone, or like I'd travel to meet him, or he'd travel to meet me, or whatever. But we weren't really like in each other's space and having to kind of make this like our space. Um, so one of the things, so I was kind of a little bit more sensitive about certain things. Like, so for instance, one of those would be my cooking. I suck at cooking, but I was trying because I was a wife and, and like I thought I was supposed to be all like domestic or whatever. Um, but whenever I would cook something, my husband can be a little blunt and very honest. And so he would just tell me, like, it's too salty, or no, I don't like it. And so that would like kick my RSD into like overdrive and feel like that I couldn't do anything good, that I was like, that I sucked, that all of my food sucks, that, I don't know, like it basically just sent me into these spirals of feeling like I could never do anything right. And then that would kind of kick in. Like I noticed over time that that sort of turned into me being my own critiquer and kind of picking myself apart. So for instance, and I think a big part of it is because when you have rejection sensitive dysphoria, you are constantly like feeling like you're going to disappoint somebody or like you're going to get in trouble. And so I think that that was, or you're going to be pushed away or something. And, so I think that that was a big thing. So yeah, so with the cooking and stuff, my husband used to make those comments, and then I found that I would then sort of take on that role instead. So whenever I would cook something, I'd be like, well, it's pretty salty, or oh, well, I cooked the chicken too dry, or something like that. So instead of um, letting him tell me like the negative comment, like I would try and like get to it first because then I felt like it wouldn't hurt as much if it came from me. But fast forward 20 years later, And, we have actually grown a lot over these 20 years, but I would say even within the past like few years, we've grown a lot and grown a lot closer. And I think even in my like journey towards my own like diagnosis, that we're kind of, as I'm learning things and I'm talking to him, and then he's kind of seeing things too. And so it's just kind of helping us, I don't know, be a more cohesive partnership. Um, so anyway, so now like I want that honest opinion. So when I cook something, like I'm trying different recipes and stuff. And so when I cook something, I want to know like, oh, well, it should be a little bit creamier, or oh, well, we shouldn't have added, or we need like a little another texture in there, or we need this. And so I will ask, and I literally do want feedback because I no longer am taking that as like a personal attack on like me or my cooking and all of that. And instead, I just am seeing it more as like I see a lot of things in life is like opportunity to grow and to make it better. Or, okay, maybe it sucked this time, but what can we do that would make it better next time? So yeah, I think that's a big thing. Another example of this would be so since I was a teacher, um, my youngest daughter, she has Down syndrome. And so I would have to have these IEP meetings. So that's just if you don't know, it's an individualized education plan. So basically, we have to get together with like her teachers and administration, and we just kind of like talk through like here's her goals, here's where she's at, here's what she's like progressing towards or needs to work on. And it also has like her accommodations. So, like, whether it's using like cards to kind of help her, like, say what she needs or wants, or just different things like that. So, it's all, we just kind of talk through that. So we had one at the end of her third grade school year, no, second grade school year, and it went pretty well. I mean, she was progressing. She struggles, but she's struggles. So, but it went well, and they said, she was doing good and all that kind of stuff. So fast forward to third grade, and we had within the first like couple months, we had like parent teacher conferences, and I just want to say, because I've gone back and forth on this video multiple times, because and I was telling my husband that like I want to tell this story because I think it's important to show like kind of like how I like took all of that and like how it impacted me. And but at the same time, like I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus. I'm just trying to like say my side. So no, like everything's cool. We're good. Like, but this was just a moment that happened that I wanted to talk about. Okay, little disclaimer. Um, so yeah, so she had these IEP meetings, and because I was a teacher, I would just do them online sometimes. And so I remember for this particular one, I was just in my classroom. It was during like a planning time period for me, and so I was just doing the Zoom call with them. And when we did the Zoom call, it was kind of all of a sudden like, hey, we don't know if this is the best fit for her anymore. And so again, we'd had our IEP meeting at the end of second grade, and so I thought everything was good. And so I thought this would be just more of the same of like, she's doing good, or it's taking her a little time to like warm up to us, or she's a stinker and tries to get away, or whatever. I expected something. But for them to then just kind of come in and say, like, we don't think that this is the school for her, was devastating because she had been at that school since pre-K. And so, she was going into, or she was in third grade. And so that's the only school she's known. And she knows all the teachers, the administration, the students. She's a very bubbly, like outgoing little girl that as soon as she like walks through the school, everyone's like, hey, Taylor. And so yeah, so I like in my head, I just pictured she would be at this school from like pre-K to fifth grade, and then we'd move to, the next school. Um, but and of course, like this, when they were saying that they didn't think that it was no any longer the best fit for her. So she is in a gen ed classroom. So she's in there with her neurotypical peers. And She does get pulled out for like math and a few other things like throughout the day, but she is with the class like other times and she does recess with them and does like all of the like library and PE and all of that kind of stuff with her class. Um, so she enjoys it, but she also like gets exhausted very easy. So, and they have said this ever since she was younger that usually like she's good morning wise, and then we hit like midday or she has lunch, and then it's just like downhill from there. So the rest of the day is her basically saying she wants to go home or just doesn't want to work and all that kind of stuff. So I knew she struggled with transitions. She struggles with transitions at home. Um, and so that was just something that they brought up. But when they said that they didn't think that that was the best school for her anymore, like I was like, okay, so you're telling me that here's my daughter who struggles with transitions, and you're telling me she struggles with transition. Sorry, that's I said that word too many times. But then you're like, let's pull her from the only school she's ever known and all of the kids and teachers that she's ever known. And she has a one-on-one para. And so take her away from like these people who she cares about and care about her and make her like go to a new school and new classroom, new teachers, new everything. Like that's just way too much of a change for her. But I was also willing to kind of like listen and I wanted to. So at first when they told me it was like a punch in the stomach because I didn't expect it. And here I am, like my next class is going to be coming in soon. And so I'm trying to like keep it together and not get upset. And I'm trying to like also like I was probably like biting the inside of my cheek or something because I'm trying to like not cry when they're telling me this because it felt like a huge rejection. Like your daughter has been with us for this long and we don't want her anymore. And that's kind of how I took it. And so fast forward, I reached out to someone who we care deeply about and has been with my daughter since she was first in school. And so I knew that this was somebody who has seen my daughter on her good days and her bad days. She will tell me, like, oh, she was not listening today, or she was doing this today, or she did really good, or, whatever. Like, I trusted her to kind of tell me the truth. And, because I mean, here's these teachers who they don't know her yet. And so she really struggles whenever it's a new school year of she wants to be back in the last teacher's class. And so she'll usually do that for like 6 months or so, where she wants to be back where she knows because it's familiar and she got used to it. And I don't know what the, I don't know if anything. So yeah, so I knew it would just be kind of like a difficult thing for her. But yeah, so I wanted to get all the information I could, and they couldn't really give me any information, which I think was also very hard for me because then it was kind of like, okay, we don't think she belongs here anymore. That's it. So, I was like, okay, well, where would she go? And what would that class be like? And what, blah, 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 blah. And, and they didn't have that information. So to me, I was kind of frustrated. And I was like, well, don't come to me and tell me that my daughter no longer should be here. And then tell me that, that you don't have any information to give me on where she should go. So, so anyways, so that was that. And I was, like I said, I was in my planning period. So I was doing this meeting and I get off the meeting and I sent that text because I just was like, hey, could you just let me know, like, how is she in class? Like, what are some of the things that you're seeing? How is she functioning with like in the gen ed classroom and with her peers? And, is she struggling? Again, assuming that I would just get that like very honest answer because that's all I wanted. I want if she's struggling or she's not listening or she's doing this, like just tell me. Like I just need to know what's going on. And so I sent this message and then I was in my fourth block and so we only have 4 blocks. And so I was in my last class of the day and teaching. And then as I was teaching, I got a text back. And the text came across, it was not mean at all. It was simply just stating that I have given all of my observations to her care team. And if you have any further questions, please direct them through there. So to me, having known, feeling like this person would have given me like their true, like honest answer, that just felt like a slap in the face. Like it felt so cold and it felt so like no compassion, no like, oh, I've been with her and I want her, the best for her, which I know she does. And I know she did, but that's how I took it. Like, and again, this is why I want to explain rejection sensitive dysphoria because it does not mean that like these people, like her teacher, was trying to be mean. It doesn't mean that when I sent this text to our friend and asked for her opinion, that she did anything wrong. None of these people did anything wrong. But I took it all as a huge rejection, like a huge, like we don't want her, she doesn't belong here. And then I think when then I got that kind of message, it was just very cold and just kind of felt like she wasn't just kind of talking to me. That's all I wanted. I felt alone. Like I felt like, okay, her teachers can't tell me anything except that she doesn't belong in the school. And then I reach out to someone who I felt like could tell me something and they're not telling me anything either. So I just felt really rejected. I felt very hurt and very much like, well, who am I supposed to talk to, And so luckily, like we do have friends too that are all in the school system. And one of our friends, she could kind of tell me she actually works in like a classroom that they were kind of talking about moving my daughter to. And so she was able to give me all of those questions, like answer those questions that I had, which by the time I left, I felt so much better because I was like, I don't want to keep my daughter somewhere if they don't want her there, nor do I want to keep her somewhere if she would be better off in another place. Like I don't want to say like, oh no, she needs to be in the gen ed classroom. And that's what's so hard. This is kind of, well, all my stuff go off on tangents. Um, but that's hard too, because as a mom of someone with Down syndrome, you constantly, ever since like she was a baby, you hear like, oh, you want to inclusion, 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 like, and she needs to be in the gen ed classroom. And, but then there's some people who you're like, well, maybe that's not the best fit for them. And that's okay too. And so that was really kind of just how my husband and I then were looking at it is we were like, we just want her to be happy. And if so, she's in class and she's struggling, or she's shutting down, or she's spending the rest of the afternoon hiding under her desk saying she wants to go home, then maybe that's not the best fit for her. Like, we just want her, like, I don't expect her to go be a doctor or something. She could. But, I just want her to be happy. Like, I just want her to feel successful in her own, like, who she is as a human being and what she does and love what she does. And so, whatever, like, steps it takes us to get there, like, we are willing to do. So, if that means that she needs to move out of a gen ed classroom and go to a communication classroom, and they really feel that will be the best fit for her, and like, whatever, then I wanted to do that. Like I wanted all of the information. That's all I wanted. I wanted the information. I didn't want to be blindsided and I just wanted to know. So anyways, skip back to my text message that I got. So that kind of then turned into me in my class, which granted this was like my most difficult class of that year. And um and I just started crying. So I'm sitting there trying to teach, and then I just have to like step away to my desk. And I have a problem sometimes where if I'm crying, like, sorry, I needed to do something, but like I can't shut it down. Like if it's coming, it's coming, and there's just no stopping it. And so, I was sitting there, and my students were doing good. They were all doing like they're some working on something, so they were good. But I just couldn't stop crying. And, I was supposed to have someone in there who was like my like teacher assistant, but he wasn't in there. So I just, which would have been nice if he would have been, so that I could have like stepped out and not sit there and cried in front of all of my students. But I'm a human and that hurt my feelings. And so, yeah, I cried. And I will tell you though, this class, having been one of the most difficult classes, had the biggest hearts. I had so many students come up to me, ask me if I was okay. I had some students come up and ask to give me a hug. And, they just showed like such this empathy of really like, okay, let's do what we need to do. She's having a tough moment, like let her just kind of do her thing. And so, and I did. I sat there and I was at my desk and I kind of like was doing things, but I have to like stay busy and I'm sitting there crying the whole time, which sucked. And then finally, like my teacher assistant came in and like I could step out and just go to the bathroom and cry. Um, but again, and then like after school, I was talking to one of my coworkers and telling her the story. And she's an inclusion specialist. And so she was being helpful. But again, I was breaking down in tears. And so, like I said, I think yes, I was emotional and I was sensitive, but I was also like took this as a huge rejection. And I think that's where instead of it just being something that it hurt my feelings and it made me sad, like it was soul crushing is how it feels. And so I just think that's an important point of rejection sensitive dysphoria to understand is that when we get upset or something hurts our feelings or we feel like we're going to be rejected, then it is devastating. Like I have, for my oldest daughter, I've had to go pick her up from school a few times because somebody like made her feel rejected or someone said something to her and it just like really hurt her feelings and she couldn't kind of recover from it. And so yeah, or even something as small as I remember I wrote about this at one point, but um we were at my daughter did ninja classes, and so we were at ninja and she was with her coaches, and one of her coaches just corrected her, like wasn't mean, just was like, "Hey, you need to settle down," or whatever. And I could just see my daughter's face as soon as she got that criticism, just like drop like, and I could see she was about to cry and she was trying to keep it together, and so she just kind of like beeline, she left where she was at and she like went straight to the bathroom, so of course I followed her in there, and she went in the corner and just like slid down the wall in tears and collapsed because she felt stupid, she felt like her coach didn't like her, she felt dumb, she just wanted to disappear, like she was just in tears and on the bathroom floor, and I had to try and like console her and help her work through this. And luckily, like her coach later had come and talked to her and was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And so I was just we were kind of talking to her about how like she gets very hurt and emotional when she feels she's being corrected, like it embarrasses her and it, on all this kind of stuff. And so even her coach was like, she's like, "I just want you to know," she's like, "I have autism." And so she got it and she understood. And um so anyways, like that's just some examples of like rejection sensitive dysphoria and kind of how that shows up. And I just think it's really important to understand because if somebody is I'm trying to think. I don't know. So I'll tell you what helps me. So for the longest time, I didn't even know what rejection sensitive dysphoria was. I just knew that I was sensitive, and that's what I'd been told my whole life is that I was sensitive and emotional and took things to heart and all that kind of stuff, right? And which sure, that's true. But I didn't have the words to put to it. And so instead, like what I would have to do is, let's say I had a friend and that friend went and hung out with other friends, where my brain would naturally just start going to all of those negative places and the negative self-talk. Instead, I just kind of have to be like, no. Like I have more than one friend, and when I'm with a different friend, I'm not sitting there talking trash about my other friends. I'm just in that moment enjoying the time with that friend. And so I kind of have to put things into a rational, like I have to rationalize it for myself and be like, okay, that's not really happening. They're not sitting there talking about me. They don't hate me just because they want to hang out with somebody else. Like, and so I know enough now after having those emotions and those feelings so many times to at times be able to like squash it and be like, no, that's just my head like getting away from me, but it's not really what's going on. Um, and so yeah, so I just think that it's important. And I think like that's something that I wish like even like my daughter's school and her teachers like understood what it was. My youngest daughter, we see it in her too, like things such as we'll just be sitting there and she'll do something or say something and then she'll like look at us and she'll be like, "Are you mad at me?" And we're like, "No, we're not mad at you. Like you didn't do anything." And but she like automatically takes like if you like have a huff in your voice or anything, like she takes it as like she did something wrong, that that there's something wrong with her. And so yeah, it's just it can be very debilitating because it can kind of just like knock you off your feet and send you down this emotional spiral that you weren't prepared for. But anyway, so yeah, so for me, what helps is just trying to like rationalize and to kind of put myself in, but I can't do that all the time. Obviously, like in school, I would not have sat there crying and gotten so upset if I was able to like rationalize my way out of it. So it doesn't always work. But there are definitely times when I'm able to do that. And so I try to even help my daughter and kind of tell her like, that it's that I understand how she feels and that I know it's really hurtful, but that these friends of hers aren't doing this like to be mean or on purpose, and that she needs to understand that she also struggles with rejection sensitive dysphoria and that it's something that she's going to struggle with, for quite a while. So she has to learn how to kind of let those things roll off her back or to kind of take it in and be like, okay, like breathe through it because it's not as like life altering and like devastating as it feels to me at this moment. Um so yeah, that's all. I just wanted to talk about it. Like I said, I'd started this video like multiple times on multiple days. And I'd start to tell my story, and then I would get in my own head and I'd be like, well, no, because now I'm talking like crap about people. And I don't want to do that. Like, I'm not trying to do that. But really, I was like, but that's not what I'm doing. I'm just trying to explain from my own experience, like how this shows up. And so I just want to put out here again that we love all of my daughter's teachers, and we care about all of those people that I was talking about. Um and my daughter is still at her same school. We ended up like meeting and trying some other things first, such as like getting her a communication board that she could work with, and just kind of finding other techniques to sort of try and help us and help her, instead of just kind of pulling her from the school and sending her somewhere new. So it all worked out. She's now in fourth grade and doing awesome. So, well, she still struggles with transitions, but but yeah. So thank you for listening. And if you've struggled with this, or maybe it shows up differently for you, then just let me know. Or or hopefully this, maybe you didn't have words to put to it either. Like I said, I didn't even know the name of this for the longest time. And so even though I was kind of doing things to sort of help mitigate it in my own life, like I didn't understand it. And so now I understand that no, I'm not just like overly emotional. It really is a real thing that, can be intense and overwhelming, and can be triggered by, and again, it's really important to know that it's not criticism, rejection, and failure are not don't have to be like clear. It can be perceived. Like someone could make like a huff in their breath and you feel like they're mad at me, I did something wrong. Like you just all of a sudden start thinking about like all the ways that you did something wrong. So it leads to a lot, like it leads to low self-esteem, it leads to negative self-talk, and just all this kind of stuff that isn't good. But anyway, so I'm just gonna I always pretend to end something and then I just keep rambling. So I'm really gonna end it this time. So again, thank you, and I like to hear what you have to say. Bye.